Well, tonight we are learning new details about the Trump administration's takeover of the D.C. Police Department and how federal authorities are operating in the city. We're also learning they could be here for a while if President Trump gets his way. So this afternoon, the White House reported there were more than 1,400 law enforcement officials working in D.C. last night. 750 of them were D.C. police officers. The rest were a variety of federal officers and agents. 30 National Guard troops were on the ground, with significantly more expected tonight. And starting tonight, the federal operation will run 24/7. And today, President Trump said he plans to ask Congress for a long-term extension of the federal takeover of D.C. police. Our Kelly Vaughn joins us now from Northwest D.C. with more on the president's plan.
When the president invoked the Home Rule Act, he got temporary control of D.C. police for 30 days. Now, to extend that any farther, Congress will have to pass a joint resolution. Speaking today, the president says he believes Republicans in Congress will approve of the extension almost unanimously.
We're going to want extensions. I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will.
Speaking at the Kennedy Center Wednesday morning, President Trump said this about the federal takeover of D.C. police.
People are feeling safe already. I've had so many calls. Thank you, sir. Thank you. They were afraid to walk out. They're not afraid anymore.
He says he plans to create a crime bill for D.C. that will be an example for other cities. Ending cashless bail will be a top priority, as well as beautifying the city by redoing roads and medians and removing homeless encampments.
We're going to be redoing the parks, the grasses and all. We're going to be going to Congress for a relatively small amount of money, and Lindsey and the Republicans are going to be approving it. I don't know about the Democrats. They don't approve anything.
Amid the president's federal takeover of MPD and the deployment of the National Guard, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has once again called for D.C. statehood.
Statehood's ridiculous. It's unacceptable.
The president says he intends to make D.C. an entirely crime-free city. Now, the federalization of D.C. police will end early next month. That's without any extensions. Reporting in D.C., Kelly Vaughn, WUSA 9.
Now, constitutional and civil rights experts say the federal takeover is so unprecedented, it's a good reminder to know your rights. The ACLU of D.C. says for now, they're only hearing of an increased federal law enforcement presence in neighborhoods. The executive director spoke with our Matthew Torres, who was live in Shaw this afternoon. And Matthew, what more is she telling you?
Well, she's saying this is a broad abuse of power, but even then, people's rights are still the same. She says that knowing your rights, when to voice it, and staying calm is key.
You got your ID on you, Chip?
In this video posted on social media,
No, I live right here. Okay, cool. It's a cigarette.
a man in a D.C. neighborhood captures U.S. Park Police questioning him as he was on his stoop.
Did y'all get a call or something about right here?
No, so we're doing checks, keeping everybody safe down here.
This is one interaction as President Donald Trump's federal takeover spreads across the city. With the presence of National Guard troops and more federal law enforcement, the American Civil Liberties Union of D.C. says this is a time to know your rights.
And that's why it's really important in this time to not panic, to not go to the worst case scenario of what could happen, but to prepare.
ACLU DC says if a federal agent stops you, you have the right to remain silent, but you should say so out loud. You also have the right to refuse consent of searches on you, your car, or your home, and you can ask for a lawyer immediately.
You may be asked, could you just empty your pockets for me? You have a right to say no, but if you are not being detained, you do have the right to walk away. So you can say, am I being detained? And the officer says no. You can tell them what you are going to do. I am going to walk away.
I only asked because when you walked up, at the moment you walked up, you only asked me.
Yeah, well, it smelled like the odor of marijuana.
ACLU DC Executive Director Monica Hopkins says this interaction is a reminder that smoking marijuana on your property is not only legal in the city. DC law says the smell alone does not mean suspicion of a crime.
Tell your boys, like,
All right. And the executive director is also saying that, of course, it is allowed to record your interaction with officers, but experts say do not alleviate the situation, antagonize, or try to impede any investigation. But if you are in a situation where you are taken into custody, she also says try to remember as much information as possible, including the information on the badge and the officer's name. So,
These are all good reminders, especially during such a tense time. Matthew, thank you. And one of the biggest questions right now is what powers does the National Guard actually have? On Monday, President Trump said the troops could help clear homeless encampments. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth clarified they won't perform traditional police functions, though they could temporarily detain suspects until police arrive. Under Title 32, the Guard is allowed to make arrests, but historically, they're deployed in times of major disturbances like riots to protect lives and property, not enforce the law. We asked Professor Matt Dalick of George Washington University for perspective.
There may be some other federal agents, FBI, DEA, they may have the power to arrest, but I guess in an ideal world, they would be working closely hand in glove with the DC police. And it would be the police who are making the actual arrests if necessary. Whereas,
and let me also punctuate, while the National Guard is visible throughout the city, the DC Police Department is still the go-to when it comes to answering emergency calls and making arrests. And more city leaders are reacting to President Trump's orders. Councilmember Charles Allen is calling it an attack on the District of Columbia.
But bringing in members of the military, bringing in federal law enforcement does not make our city safer, and it's dangerous. And I think that the only reason it's happening here in DC is simply because it can. We don't have the same type of rights. We don't have statehood. We don't have members in Congress. And the president is able to control our city the same way he may be trying to control other cities in the very near future.
And tonight, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Jeanine Pirro, reacts to a viral confrontation with law enforcement in Northwest D.C. You might have seen this already on your feed. Officials say a man aggressively approached a federal officer, yelling, cursing, and berating him before throwing a sandwich and hitting that officer in the chest. And you can see he booked it, ran away from there. The man was arrested at the scene and will be charged with assault on a police officer. Pirro is using this video as a warning to the public about attacking law enforcement.
An individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there, stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
Well, okay, you can count on WUSA 9 to stay on top of new developments in the coming days and weeks. Be sure to download the WUSA 9 Plus app.